Who's ready for a party back in 1985? Yep, that's right. We're going Independence Day style with Return of the Living Dead. All right, Kevin, before we get to the good, the bad, and the ugly of Return of the Living Dead, what are your earliest memories of this movie?
You know what? They just came back to me actually like not 2 minutes ago, and we were talking about it. My earliest memory of this movie is seeing the cover art of the VHS in the rental store and thinking it was just so damn cool looking because there was a zombie with a mohawk on there. And it looked very unamused and cool all at the same time. And
Is this the one you're talking about then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Nope.
I always thought that was the coolest thing growing up as a kid, and like that. And we were talking about that just now. That's my earliest memory of it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we were just before we started recording, we were showing each other like, "Hey, what version do you got? What version do you got?" on home video, and I wish I had like an old VHS tape. I think that'd be pretty dope to have in a collection around here because I have a little VHS collection and whatnot, but I never owned this before until this Scream Factory Blu-ray. So I have this. I sold my slip cover. It's got a custom cover art on here. Like that's for everybody to see. I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of the original movie poster cover art. So that's usually what I flip these to on most of their releases. But for the movie, it's like, yeah, whatever. As long as the movie looks good and it's got some fun extras, I'm always game. So I like this one. I need to check out more of the extra features though.
Yeah, I actually rarely ever do I for this show, or do I get to for this show, sit and watch special features to a movie, get to know a little bit more about it. And I finally got to do that with this picture.
Oh, yeah.
And I had not seen them before because I hadn't actually gotten to watch the Blu-ray. I've always watched my old DVD. But my brother Duke sent me the Blu-ray some time ago, and I've just never had the opportunity to sit and watch it. And I'm like, this is the opportunity. This is the time. And it's beautiful. It was such a nice transfer of it.
Yeah, I think, this is probably largely based off the MGM transfer. I don't think... This basically just has a new 2K scan of the inner positive, which isn't like the best, but it is still a new scan of an older print. So this looks pretty good in my opinion. And, I am very glad to have this in the collection. And it's very timely considering it stays over like the 4th of July turn of the timeline when this movie starts and when it ends.
The Independence Ring.
Hells yeah. So Kevin, before we get into our topics, please everybody hit the little like button down below. Comment. We want to hear about your memories, your thoughts of Return of the Living Dead. Hell, if you even want to talk about the sequels, you can do that down below. That's a-okay. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification. We would love to have you along with us as we talk about all of our movies, forgotten TV shows, and our live streams. All right. That's enough shilling. Let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Return of the Living Dead.
Bum, bum, bum.
Tom Matthews.
Yeah, man. My first, the good of this movie, the great of this movie is the cast.
Hells yes.
Such a stellar cast. But the total cream that rises to the top is James Karen and Tom Matthews.
I was going to say the cream that gets me to rise to the top is definitely Linnea Quigley.
Well, yeah.
Somebody had to say it on this show. If we don't, hey, we got no cred with anybody. Am I right, people, or am I right?
He got risen.
I have risen. Down, boy.
This movie like totally made Tom my hero as a kid. I don't know why. Like I just thought he was cool, and you were with me when we got to meet him, and I was just like a child, like, you're so cool. Because like he started the zombie apocalypse twice, and that's just awesome for me.
He did it here and in Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love him. And also check out Never Hike Alone, the loose fan-made sequels that connect to that. So
Yeah.
shout out for
Really good.
Vincente and Never Hike Alone, people. Love you guys.
So, but they are great. The two of them they truly make this movie worth watching. This is not your typical zombie film, and there's a lot of reasons why. And it starts with their acting and their chemistry together. Wow, is all you could say. Like a veteran actor and a brand new actor working together for the first time in a very short period of time, just instantly hitting it off really well.
Darn, what a concept.
Yeah. And come to find out, one of the things that just didn't happen around this time, and I guess still doesn't happen, is they paid for a week of rehearsals for this movie. So James and Tom got to like work together and work on their reactions, like say the line, give the reaction. You see this, give the reaction, say the line. And like they were starting to get real feel for one another. And then Gallagher comes on and started working with them in the same way. And he's not the same type of person as James Caron was, but was able to work with them just as well and see that Tom could work with Caron just as well and just instantly respected him for that, from what I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. They had a absolute fantastic chemistry, and they seem to connect on a personal level that always translate on screen to a very good dynamic and relationship to be able to counterplay off of each other. So the interplay between the two is just flawless and outstanding. And that kind of is infectious. That carries on to the rest of the cast where everybody just kind of clicks and fits. It's like you got this weird ensemble going on, and like the characters themselves, once you actually get to the gang of friends, like you take a look at this picture and you're like, okay, so you got a guy in a suit and a tie, a couple of girls looking very conservative, and a couple of dudes looking like a couple of punk rockers ready to fuck shit up or go to a BDSM club. And then you got Linnea Quigley looking smoking hot like a punk rock goth chick over onto the side. It's like, how the hell are these people even friends? But they are, and it works. They all play off each other exceedingly well. So the whole entire cast, like there had to be this sense of camaraderie before you even got to shooting, and then in between scenes they had to have been having some fun together and enjoying each other. I know there was some weird situations on set with like the weather and sickness and things like that, but it seemed like everybody legitimately cared about each other, and that played a role in how good you connect with this as an audience to any of these characters that you could possibly identify with.
Yeah, like everyone seemed to genuinely care for one another. So when their demise came about, like they actually showed emotion towards one another, or showed caring for even suicide getting killed,
Yeah,
which is really funny to say. But
I know. Suicide, the name of the character, not the self-deletion event that you're not supposed to talk about on YouTube. It's a character
yeah,
name, YouTube.
yeah. And the answer to why everyone's friends with suicide is he knows the answers because he has the car.
He's got the hot rod. Suicide.
But
The Suicide mobile.
that cast of friends, they cracked me up because again, you're right. It's of person back in the 80s all in one car, and they fight
Oh yeah.
like a family, like they like rabid weasels in a bag almost, but they're all having fun once the beer comes out, once the coke comes out, or whatever else. The music starts playing, they're all partying. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and even if when they have to like ditch a friend or something like that in a particular situation, they always try to at least show that, hey, I don't feel good leaving them behind, or we got to get away just for this moment so we can recoup, figure out a plan, and go back and help them. So it's like
Yeah.
they're always constantly thinking about each other, and that's very nice to see. You could say that that's the writing, you could say it's acting. I think it's a combination of all things. Overall, that really plays into the great dynamic that this movie has with everybody.
Yeah, because you don't see that in modern zombie telling. Like
Oh, hell no.
it's the bad guys are always the normal people. They're always the ones screwing each other over. Like zombies are creatures in the background that eat you because the other person screwed you over.
Send more paramedics. That's about as closely knit as the zombies were. Was as long as we get brains, we don't care who calls in the paramedics or the cops.
This guy here. This is one of the greatest scenes ever. Like this was the first movie where the zombies ever really talk
or showed any real intelligence.
Yeah, and they're smart too. They could put together sentences. They could explain things. Hell, one of them explains why they like brains. It makes the pain of being dead stop. And it's just so damn cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the other things I really like about the movie on the good side is the overall script writing is fantastic. This is a great idea. From what I understand, this wasn't the initial script, but this is the script that they settled on. And I think it came across very well, especially since the break apart from Romero to then this crew doing the Return of the Living Dead. So it's unfortunate, but this became more of the horror comedy that we would see then come forward a little more full force and rolling out over the next 10 to 15 years that would ultimately lead us to some really fun ones like House and Tremors. So I can kind of look back at this one and be like, this is kind of where it started a little bit. I'm not going to say it's like the father of it all, but this definitely was a big jolt to, hey, we can have some comedy and some fun situations in a horror movie. It'll help alleviate the tension just a tick before we ratchet it up again.
Yeah, right. Let that girl not be completely twisted up while you're trying to make out with her. Let her have a little bit of relief and laugh and shit like that.
Pretty much.
Because that's what these movies were for back then, of course.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think Dan O'Bannon did a pretty good job with all the characters in the writing. So I'm pretty pleased with how this movie played out. Now it could be argued about like the sequels that they don't follow it up the best, and like the second sequel has a repurposed script that was used for Chud 2. So it's like, oh, well, that could have been interesting.
Is that why Miranda's all fucked up in that movie?
It could be. To be honest, I haven't seen that one in a very long time, so I can't.
I just remember her looking like a Cenobite or some shit like that.
Oh, that's part 3.
Oh.
You're talking about the girl and she starts piercing herself to alleviate her hunger pains?
Is that what she was doing?
Yeah, that was, what was that, Mandy Clark?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part 3. Part 2 is the military, the canister rolls off the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And the kids get locked in a mausoleum and they're bullied and this, that, and the other, and it kind of goes nuts from there.
That's right. Okay. And then they've got the thriller joke towards the end when they're electrocuting them and they're all dancing around like Michael Jackson.
Bingo! That's part 2.
I liked that one.
Yeah, I like that one too.
But I'm easy to please too.
Yeah.
That one does not have the majesty that this movie had. This movie was not that overtly funny. It was a lot more tongue in cheek. Like the violence was funny. There were no jokes to be told necessarily. The other one had jokes and gags. This one wasn't exactly that.
No, it was more horror with comedy thrown in, like situational comedy as well. Like one of the things I kind of really enjoy, aside from like the name of the supply company, You Need a Medical Supply Company, was the fact that they were making tracks about like how, that Night of the Living Dead movie, that's actually based on true events. Here's what really happened. And they have the disclaimer at the beginning of the movie saying, this is, names have been changed and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, I really like the setup. It kind of sets the tone for what's to come. And so I'm also trying to differentiate from, we're not Night or Dawn or Day of the Dead. We're Return of the Living Dead. And
that's right.
I appreciated that. When I put these on my shelf, I kind of all put them together because it works as a universe for me, like some alternate timeline or whatever, or just a different part of the world, as opposed to something like The Walking Dead. This feels more like a fun little deviation from the ultra serious George Romero ones to then these. Now I stop at part 3. I don't go to part 4 or 5 though.
No, and even then, I stop at part 2.
Yep.
That's just me. That's where I've stopped in my collection anyway.
I have up
Accidentally
to part
bought.
3. That's where I kind of stopped. So
Oh, well, like I said, I bought in good faith Necropolis or whatever it was called, and I was kind of like,
ugh.
no.
That's an acquired taste for Sci-Fi Channel low budget fans. That's what that is.
Yeah, I prefer Big Ass Spider.
Yeah. Now, Kevin, got to ask you, do you like the special effects in this one? Because I think they look top notch in this bad boy, and I think that really helps as a horror movie.
Well, I'm going to say yes, and we'll throw up this pretty lady here. We talked about
Aha.
her before. She was absolutely beautiful to look at. Like, they had a few different stunts set up with her. She bit Scuzz in the head, and from the other side of his head off camera was a like blaster pump of a hose and just started spraying arterial blood everywhere. So she gets,
Everywhere. It was like a
yeah.
bomb went off.
And so after a few takes, there's like they had to clean up everything, and it just took forever. They had to just go with takes.
Yep.
So that's why she's got pink. Oops, that's why she's got pink hair. She's not Punk. She just got blood from that guy's head squirt everywhere on her.
Damn it. You could have said she was Punk before Punk was a thing, and Linnea Quigley was just ripping her off.
Before it was cool. And
Yeah.
then they used neat puppetry tricks where you think you're seeing Don Calfa's legs back there, but it's the mirror, and they're controlling her and talking at the same time, and it's just wonderful. And he's talking to the puppet directly rather than the puppeteers or responding to someone off camera reading a script. Like,
Right.
he was doing such a good job making you believe that he's talking to this half torso of a woman.
He was great too.
Yeah. So I mean, the special effects are bar none in this. And Dan O'Bannon would complain that if he had a bigger budget, he would have done this. If he had a bigger budget, he would have done that. Like, Tarman would have looked twice as gross. How do you make Tarman look twice as gross? Like, you nailed that son of a bitch to perfection.
You give him the $180 million budget from the Acolyte is what you do.
The Accolade.
A movie like this would make very good use of all of that money. Just saying.
Donate the remainder to charity or like
They'd only need like 8 million of it.
No kidding.
Jesus. But no, they for what they did, for the money that they did have, they did a fantastic job on the visual effects, the practical effects. Everything just looked flawless. Like, this was lightning in a bottle with this movie, and there's really not much bad we could say about it. But Kevin, unless you got anything more on the good side, what do you think?
No, I guess we could skip to the bad, because the bad's kind of intertwined with this part. We did talk a little bit about it. Hey, get back here, you. The budget.
Yes.
Okay, so do you see that right down there, that little cord between the top of the skeletal jaw and the bottom of the jaw? That's the only bad part of this movie. Only bad part of that movie is that one peak of that wire there.
I thought they were just stringing everybody along.
Like, really, Dan O'Bannon hated that this came out so poorly.
And it was recycled also twice in this movie. So you didn't just see it once, you saw it twice. That was what I would say is they had to unfortunately recycle some footage later on in the movie from previous scenes and from stock footage. So
yeah, but at least it was cool when they did it.
That's true.
They synced it up with a good song.
Yes.
And like, the ending was so explosive, literally, that when it happened again, you're just kind of like, well, fuck yeah!
Let's blow shit up now.
Yeah. So I mean, I forgave it. I've always liked this guy. I always did, but I get why he didn't like it, and I get what he's saying. On a level of comparison, this sucks compared to everything else that they did. The dog, the little split not cocker spaniel, like the little terrier that they had.
Yeah.
He said if they had the budget, that would have been a Great Dane. I have a
Really?
Great Dane. Yeah, that would
Wow.
have been a huge thing to do.
No kidding.
But I
Kill
also
it.
think it
Kill
was,
it till it's dead.
yeah, like I think it was funnier that they were beating the shit out of half of a
Half.
terrier.
Yeah.
They weren't beating the shit out of a terrier. They were beating the shit out of half of a terrier with a crutch.
Goddamn right, pal.
And crying like 3-year-old girls while they were doing it.
That was super funny. They were all freaking out trying to figure out what to do. And it's like, oh my God, just start screaming and whacking it with whatever you can find.
Yeah, and no matter what anyone tries to do to resolve the situation in this movie, they make it worse, leading to their own death at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hysterical how poorly and how quickly this movie goes downhill for your entertainment.
Yeah.
Like, if they would have just called the military at the very beginning, like, oh shit, we got sick, we better call, everything would have been fine. They probably would have been killed or would have been quarantined, but everything would have been fine. Military would have been able to take that material.
Yep.
Fucking Bert probably wouldn't have even been hurt.
Or Ernie.
Yeah, but no, they yeah, they take it to Ernie. They burn the remains. That goes up into the clouds, comes back down from the rain into the ground. Everything they do makes it worse. And from the point,
everything they do makes it worse.
Yeah, and where they totally lose control is where Linnea Quigley gets out.
Oh, she got out very early in this movie.
Yeah, she did. We didn't get to show that part, did we?
Where
is that? We can go back.
We can incorporate it here because censored versions of this movie usually block off a lot of this, and the only way to watch this movie is the uncensored version. Yes, we're going to be a little bit piggy with this, but like, it's legit. You want to watch this movie as it was intended and shot and directed, and she lets it all hang out. And she was okay with this. She's done so many movies like this, but yeah, I know she's got some stories about this particular movie inside.
She has gone on record several times for saying that she has the best breasts in horror. I hesitate to use the word stupendous ever.
Those are stupendous.
The S stands for stupendous.
Double S's.
Like, I'm sorry. I also don't mean to be a pig, but as a kid watching this, you're like, God damn. As an adult watching this, you're like, get out. God damn.
It's a different goddamn. You need a Ron Simmons little gag where he goes, damn.
Damn. Yeah, my kids are not allowed to watch this one with me. They can watch it on their own, just not with me.
Or if you found like a TV version, maybe, but like they're still a little young for all the gross out gore and death scenes.
Yes, my kids are. I really liked this kind of shit when I was a kid. So,
oh yeah,
like I showed Zoe a picture of Tarman and the half torso lady because she was like, "Well, I really want to see the zombies. Zombies scare you. They chase you. This and that." I'm like, "Do you want to see what it looks like here?"
Yep.
Totally unfazed. Like, good. Go on. Don't tell mom.
Yeah, don't tell mom.
Ever.
When we were kids, that was one thing you understood. You don't tell mom, you just watch this movie. Or about most of the other movies you did watch.
My kids are autistic, so the moment I say don't tell mom, they're like, hey, guess what?
Mom, where's the meatloaf?
Yeah, guess what dad just showed us? It was fucking awesome. Wait, what did you just say?
It was fucking awesome.
Stupendous. It was stupendous.
Use the word stupendous.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, trash. We were talking about trash.
Some of the names in this I wasn't exactly feeling, but I know that was just a product of the time for that. So I would clump that in the bad. That and some of the dialogue at times is a pretty plain or kind of just cheesy bad at times. But, you know, you don't expect high art with this movie. Let's just be frank here. Like, we're not looking for like Academy Award winning dialogue here.
No, no. Like the Academy Award is in the fun for this movie. Like if they had movies that had, or there were Academy Awards for movies that were just pure fun, this is one that would have stood above the rest in that year. Like,
God, the MTV Movie Awards at this time would have fucking made this like King of the Year.
yeah, like this movie would have been huge today. And
yes, well, yeah, maybe.
I think so. I think so. But that'll be the ugly. That'll be the ugly. This here, derailing already on a 0 point. I love where Suicide's getting rubbed up and should have a boner, and he's complaining and whining about his angst.
He's got pent-up aggression, Kevin. It's called passive-aggressive tension. He wants the attention, but he doesn't at the same time.
She's willing to rub it out for him. I mean, come on now.
Well, she doesn't have the ball gag and the whips. I mean, what's a man supposed to do when she doesn't bring the toys to the yard?
Allow the fisting? I don't know.
Horse fisting. Right on. Star Wars reference.
God damn.
Oh, anyway. She was wonderful in this, though.
Yeah, I think all the actors did a very good job for what they were given. So I have no problem about what they did at all.
No, I do feel bad for her, though. Like you said, all kidding aside, she was hired to strip and do the dance in this movie. That is what she was hired for.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of that was done in the rain.
Yes. And I thought she got sick from it, too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And they had to keep covering her up in the mud and stuff like that to reshoot and have her like unbury herself. And golly, the more you hear about it and the more you see it over and over again in the behind the scenes, like your heart just breaks for this poor woman. You're like, God bless you for being a trooper, man. Fucking golly.
Yeah.
They kicked her ass.
Yeah, they did. They really put her through the ringer, so to speak. And I seem to remember that from watching one of the special features like a long time ago. Was she was talking about like, I had no problem doing this, but the constant in the water and the mud, and I think she just ended up getting really sick at one point, and they had to like take care of her, and she had to be treated by actual EMTs a couple of times, but she kept doing it and pulling through. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody. This is just a memory from like a previous interview or making of from a few years ago. I don't know if it's on this set or not, but I do distinctly remember her, at least she got sick, like almost really bad while she was shooting this movie, but she's still on record saying she was glad she did it. She just might have handled it a little bit differently or asked for more precautions so she could be taken care of appropriately for her health, which is very fair.
Yeah, right. No one wants to die for a zombie flick, especially when you're still divining the zombie era or genre.
Exactly.
Which this movie does, by the way. We failed to mention
and does
that.
very well.
Yeah, this is the movie that defines brains. Like, this was the first movie where like they specifically want brains and they're moaning for brains. This is what started that. Prior to that, Night of the Living Dead and The Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, they were just flesh eaters.
Yep, the Dead movies specifically. This was the Living Dead franchise. They changed quite a bit so that they could run their own franchise.
Yes, which again was a friendly rivalry between Romero and was it Russo? Was that the other gentleman's name?
Yes, I believe they all worked on the first one anyway, and they just had a little disagreement on where to take the franchise, and it just kind of split off from there.
Yeah, and basically what they did was said, well, fine, I'll do this, you do that, see how it goes. And they shook hands. It wasn't a fuck you situation. It was a shake hands, let's see how this goes, because we can't agree.
Yeah, and if it didn't work out, I'm sure eventually they would have come back around and been like, hey, you were wrong, I was wrong, let's get back together and make another goddamn awesome movie here.
Yes.
They
yeah.
easily could have ended up coming back around to that, from my understanding of that situation. So that would probably be one of the things I would probably clump into the bad. Is so unfortunate you didn't have like any sort of involvement from like George Romero, but I don't think it was really necessary for this movie. It needed to separate on its own and be its own movie and its own franchise and ideas.
I think so. And Dan O'Bannon, as a first-time director, knocked this movie right the hell out of the park.
I like Dan O'Bannon. I have no problem with it. I also really like George Romero. So it's like, don't ask me to choose between two of my best friends, please.
Mom and Dad.
Not that I'm actually friends like any of these people, but just that's the situation. It feels like I'm not choosing. I like both. I'm good.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah.
All right, Kevin. Should we get into it? Let's get into the ugly. Tarman.
There were things that got left on the cutting room floor for this movie. Almost the movie itself, it got lost in VHS land for the longest time. It was late to the DVD years. It took a strong petition from thousands of people that got Dan O'Bannon involved to get this digital release. Like MGM just kind of lost this.
Which happens from these larger studios. They honestly either didn't catalog it right, or they just misplaced it, or it got destroyed in a fire that sometimes happened with a lot of these catalog houses where they kept all the prints.
And there's a lot of trite horror films from the 80s. Goodness, yes, there are. This is not one of those flicks. It's rated, 7.3 stars, which for a cheesy 80s flick is pretty high. It really is. It's a smart movie. It's got a lot of dirty words. There's a lot of boobies in it and some butt cracks, but it's a smart movie. It's a fun movie. It's got some amazing actors in it doing some amazing craft work, but it didn't get that respect. It still doesn't get the respect I think that it deserves. It's gotten some great documentaries. It's gotten some books written about it, but it's still it's a cult film.
I would agree with that. This would be one of those things I would clump into the ugly. Is like, it's been a little unfairly, what's the right word? Underappreciated, I want to say a little bit. Like, most people like the movie, but they just don't put it in the same kind of classification as, say, like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, of that sort. But it's a completely different movie. You have to judge this one on its own. So I always kind of understood and felt like this didn't quite get the respect it should have gotten. Now, I'm not going to talk about the sequels. That's a completely different ball of wax. But this one in and of itself is really good. And when you talk about like characters making stupid decisions, at that time when this movie came out, I would watch this movie and feel like I would make most of the same decisions they were. You don't know when incinerating a body is going to release everything into the air. You just don't. You don't. All the rules that you thought you knew from like the fake movie based on true events is like, take out the brain, shoot the brain. Well, they put a spike through a brain and it doesn't do anything. So they're just trying to come up with, what do we got to do to take care of the situation? It's just unfortunate that every move they make is a dumb, bad idea, but they don't know that. We don't know that as an audience. You can look back now with these kind of modern eyes and look back and be like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. But when this movie came out, what was the first thing you would have done if you were in this movie? And this movie did that. That's where I feel like the intelligence of this movie kind of shines. Like, the one big problem would be they didn't contact the military right away. They really should have. That would have averted quite the crisis. But when you talk about the ugly, I'll also go to the Tar Man. Like, there are some scenes where it looks like they got different actors playing the Tar Man. The build looks different. The gore and the overall black goo looks a little different. So when it goes from like going up and down the stairs, it looks a little different. One time it looks a little bulky. The other times it looks a little slim and slender. I was going to say slim and tender, but it's like slim and tender.
That's a word now.
Yeah. So or Slender. God, I did it again. Jesus Christ. But it just, there's an inconsistency between some of the scenes, and it's okay. I understand. Like, they didn't have the budget, and probably some stuff got clipped out onto the cutting room floor, like you just mentioned. So that, I would call that an ugly thing, is like, it feels like some things were kind of like missing from this movie at times, and it might be because of all the various edits that they had to do.
That and character building. Like,
yeah,
look at this here. We talked about it a little bit the other night. Look above Bert, or between Bert and Ernie there. Now, what's happening here is Ernie's finding out that those aren't rabid weasels in the bags, that they're actually the body parts that are still reanimated.
Yeah, Mr. Grabby Hands there.
Yeah, and they're making this rubber arm. They're making you believe that this rubber arm is alive and eating Ernie. But above Clu Gallagher there is a picture of Adolf Hitler. So what they've alluded to throughout the entire movie is...
Don't say the N-word, that gets you flagged on YouTube.
Oh, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
Is that Ernie was from Germany and moved here sometime in the late 40s. He worked at the crematorium. He was very knowledgeable about human anatomy. He was constantly listening to German operas. He has a German Walther that he's commonly pointing at people. He has a German wooden carved pipe that he's smoking all the time.
We had a bunch of friends telling us about some of these things too, so it seems like this is a pretty good consensus on the character.
Yeah, and we're like, oh my goodness, is he
could he be one, or did he like, it makes you just kind of think twice about Ernie just a tick.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's one of those things. And then you see him start to feel bad where he's talking to the half torso of the woman, asking her why you eat brains. And she's saying it stops the pain of being dead. And he realizes that dead people have feelings, and that he possibly knows a lot of dead people. Who knows?
Very good. Well,
but the last thing you see of Ernie is him pulling out that Walther and pointing it at the back of Tina's head. He's getting ready to shoot her right as the movie ends.
Right.
And you're like, oh shit, this is going to end like Tom Jane in The Mist.
Oh, that ending was brutal, man.
Well, yeah, but these guys all got incinerated before that got to happen. So
yeah, it all hit ground zero right at that same moment. I really like that last scene where they're like, do you hear that? I hear something. And then boom. It was a cheesy special sound effect for that. It's like, oh my God, that is not what that sounds like. It would just be the shock wave you would hear after impact.
Yeah, and I think they'd probably hit that town so close that there wouldn't be a shockwave sound. You'd probably just vaporize.
8,000 square miles. And it still wasn't enough because they unleashed the apocalypse.
Right. Not once, but twice. But that's the next film.
Yeah, pretty much. Just without all the electricity in this first one. Kevin, you got anything more on the ugly, or do you want to get to some final judgment?
That's it I had for the ugly, man. Like, this is not a bad flick for me.
No, yeah, no.
This is
we were struggling to come up with things that we could talk about on the bad and the ugly, other than like a couple things here and there. So
yeah, and they're just nitpicks is all they are. We're joking.
Yeah.
That's all you could really do. Like, my final judgment on this is a fantastic horror film. It's the most fun you're going to have in a horror film pre-House, I think.
I would say so, yeah.
Like, really, and again, I put James Cameron up there because he makes this movie for me. Like, Tom Matthews is the hero in the movie for me, but James Cameron makes the movie fun. Like, his crying and freaking out and playing off of Tom all the time, and then playing off of Clue is just this amazing experience to it's like watching Clue and laughing the entirety of the time that you're watching it. It's kind of like that whenever you're watching James Cameron on this film. You're laughing and having a good time, or he's making you smile. Very similar.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about Clue and Tom specifically as well. Like, the whole dynamic between the three was absolutely fantastic, and that's what really drives the movie along. Without those three, I don't know if I'd like the movie as much as anybody else would. Like, that's just the emotional core of this movie. Even like Tom's girlfriend, I forgot what the hell her name was. Like I said, some of the names Tina. The names are just so unremarkable or unmemorable. Other than, it's just one of those things. Like Suicide, that's you remember a couple of them, but the rest of them are forgettable names. But it's so much fun. I would have loved to have seen this one in the movie theater. Hell, if this was in a movie theater on an anniversary coming up, I'm gonna make my way to go see it in the theater with a bunch of other horror nut jobs that just absolutely love this movie, because this is so much fun. And of all the Return of the Living Dead movies, this is the best one. And I would recommend this to just about anybody. If you like a good horror movie, you just want to relax, turn your brain off on the 4th of July with a few drinks, a few edibles, few whatevers. You don't even have to drink to enjoy this movie. This isn't that kind of movie where you have to feel like you're in a different mental state to be like, oh, this is a little too much for you. No, you can watch this in any mental state you want. Sober, not sober, does not matter. But this is just so much fun. And I'd actually probably give this a solid 8.5 out of 10. Easy, if not a 9.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got boobs, so you can't.
I wouldn't say it's flawless. It does have some issues, but that's just nitpicking at this point.
That one wire. Oh my God.
Do you think they would do the George Lucas thing and go back and remove the wire if they could? Or are they going to have it where Linnea Quigley takes her shorts off first and then the tops?
And then the tops.
Who tops first?
Well, she took her leggings off last. Like,
that's true.
Yeah. We got to see everything else and then her legs, which is funny because the name Trash was changed. Her name was supposed to be Legs.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, kidding aside, it was Legs.
Trash for her kind of worked, but I think Legs would have been better.
Everybody in that car got HPV at some point, so.
That's very true. They're all going to have to go to the emergency room now.
Go to the clinic.
All right, Kevin, any final thoughts?
Oh, I love this flick. I'm glad we watched it. Like, everybody watches Jaws for 4th of July. This is, again, like you said, this is the overlooked 4th of July movie. I love this flick. Yeah, it's right. What I like to watch. Screw the beaches, open up the cemeteries.
And let's party. So let's go back to 1985 with Return of the Living Dead. If you like this video, please hit the little like button down below. If you have a comment, you got an idea, like we've talked about earlier, put them down below. Even if it's about the sequels, we want to hear about it. And also, please hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned to all of our 0 Point reviews where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of every movie every single week. And also stay tuned for our Sons and Shadows podcast, also now known as Nostalgia TV, the Graveyard Shift of forgotten television shows where we talk about long lost canceled TV shows, sci-fi and horror. And we have a good time doing that. We also have our live streams every Saturday night at 9:30 p.m. Pacific time. So please hit that subscribe button and stay notified so you know when all of these drop. And we want to say thank you. And we'll see you on the next one if you survive.
Brains.
If you survive, please come again. Make sure you check us out on all of our social media platforms. We got Facebook, Twitter. We are at Sons and Shadows. We're also on Instagram at Sons and Shadows Cast. We are at sonsandshadows.com. Thank you again, everybody, and we'll see you down the road.